All right, let's talk about something that kind of messes with your head. It's called the paradox of choice. We're going to dig into this wild idea that having more options is actually making us less happy. You know, we're always told that freedom means having a ton of options. Like, the more choices you have, the better. That's the dream, right? But what if that's totally backward? What if this explosion of choice in our lives isn't setting us free, but is actually paralyzing us and leaving us feeling kind of disappointed with what we pick? Yeah, that's the big question we're getting into today.
Okay, so to really get this, our story starts in a pretty unexpected place, a grocery store. And it all comes down to one of the most famous experiments in psychology, something I call the jam paradox. So, picture this. Researchers set up a little jam tasting booth. Super simple. One day, they put out 24 different kinds of jam, a huge spread. The next day, they only offered 6. Now, the big display with 24 jams, it drew a bigger crowd for sure. But here's the crazy part. Only 3% of those people actually bought any jam. 3%! But when there were only 6 jams to choose from, a whopping 30% of people bought a jar. That's 10 times more. This little experiment, it just perfectly captures the whole problem. Way too many options doesn't make us feel powerful. It fries our brains until we just walk away.
Now, of course, this isn't really about jam, is it? That little experiment was basically a snapshot of a much, much bigger issue that's all around us. We are living in a world of total and complete overload.
Just think about your own life for a second. Everything from what you buy at the store to what job you want, even who you go on a date with. The number of choices has just exploded. And it's not just a small annoyance, right? It's this constant humming stress in the background of our lives. And it hits everything from the small, everyday stuff to the huge, life-changing decisions.
Let's go back to that grocery store. You're just trying to grab a can of soup for lunch, right? Easy. But you turn down the aisle and bam! You're hit with a wall of 230 different kinds of soup. Chicken noodle, tomato, lentil, organic, low sodium. It just never ends.
All right, fine. Forget the soup. You decide to grab a salad. That's got to be easier. Nope. Now you're looking at 175 different salad dressings. Ranch, Italian, Caesar, vinaigrette, and like 12 different versions of each one. And it just gets more and more wild. Let's say you want to buy a new stereo. Well, researchers went to one big electronics store and found that if you mixed and matched all the different parts they had, you could create over 6.5 million different stereo systems. Seriously? How is anyone supposed to pick the best one out of that? You can't. It's literally impossible.
But look, this isn't just about buying stuff. The really important thing here is that this choice overload has leaked into the biggest, most important decisions in our lives. What college should you go to? What career path is the right one? How do you invest for retirement? What health insurance is best? Heck, we're even told we can and should choose our own identities. The pressure to make the perfect choice is just huge.
So, what is going on inside our heads? Why does having more options so often lead to us just freezing up and feeling bad about our choices? To figure that out, we've got to look at the psychology behind it all.
It all starts with this idea from economics called opportunity cost. It sounds fancy, but it's simple. Basically, the cost of whatever you choose is all the good stuff you're giving up in the other options. So if you choose a beach vacation, the cost is the amazing ski trip you didn't take. Now, when it's just 2 choices, that's not so bad. But when you've got dozens, your brain starts adding up all the great things about the choices you didn't make. And that big pile of what-ifs just eats away at how happy you are with the thing you actually picked.
And that feeling, that opportunity cost, it feeds right into another really powerful emotion, regret. Because when there are so many options, it is so easy to imagine that one of them was just a little bit better. You know, you buy a new phone and it's great, but you can't help thinking, maybe that other one had a slightly better camera. This little what-if game is a total recipe for feeling disappointed even if you made a really solid choice. So how do you make decisions? Psychologists say most of us lean one of 2 ways. First, there are the maximizers. Are you a maximizer? This is someone who absolutely has to research every single option to make sure they're getting the absolute best. They agonize over decisions. And the funny thing is, they usually end up feeling less happy with what they get. Then you got the satisficers. A satisficer just needs something that's good enough. They have their criteria, they find something that checks the boxes, and then they move on, happy. And as you can probably guess, the satisficers tend to have a much, much better time of it.
So really, it all comes down to this one simple truth. Just because having some choice is a good thing, that doesn't automatically mean that more choice is better.
Of course we need options to feel in control of our lives, but we've clearly hit a point where there's just so much of it, it's starting to backfire and do more harm than good.
Okay, but here's the good news. We are not just helpless victims in all this. We can actually fight back against choice overload. We just need to get a little strategic. So the real question is, how do we learn to choose better?
The secret? It's all about learning to think more like a satisficer. And they kind of have a toolkit we can borrow. There are 4 main ideas. First, choose when to choose. Basically, learn where to focus your energy. Second, embrace good enough. Super important. Third, make your decisions irreversible. Sounds weird, but it works. And fourth, practice gratitude to stop that nagging feeling of buyer's remorse.
All right, so that first step, choose when to choose. What does that actually mean? It just means you have to be deliberate. Figure out which decisions in your life are the big ones. Your career, your partner, where you live. Pour your energy into those. But for everything else, like which brand of paper towels to get or what toothpaste to buy, just make a rule and stick with it. Stop wasting your brain power on stuff that just doesn't matter in the long run.
Okay, now for that make decisions irreversible thing. Why on earth would we do that? Well, it's to fight this funny little quirk in our brains called the endowment effect. Basically, research shows that as soon as we feel like we own something, even if it's just a choice we've made, letting it go feels like a real loss. So if you just tell yourself, okay, this is it, no takebacks, you kind of shut down that part of your brain that loves to second-guess everything. You just close the door on regret and move on.
And that brings us to the final tool in the kit, gratitude. You know how humans are amazing at getting used to things? That shiny new phone or car that felt so amazing when you first got it? Yeah, a month later it's just your phone. That's a real thing. It's called hedonic adaptation. And gratitude is the perfect weapon against it. When you make a point to actually appreciate the things you have, you fight back against that "it's just normal now" feeling. It helps you stay happy with the good choices you've already made.
And you know, all of this leads to a really surprising and powerful idea. Think about the things that make us happiest in life. You know, our close friends, our family, our community. What do they all have in common? Commitment. And really, what is commitment? It's you voluntarily choosing to limit your options. You're choosing to be tied to certain people and places. And it turns out that real, deep satisfaction, it often comes from those meaningful limits, not from having endless, absolute freedom.
So I'll just leave you with this to chew on. We've always been told that freedom means having unlimited choices. But what if that's not what true freedom is at all? What if real freedom is actually having the wisdom to know which few choices really matter, and then having the courage to just let all the other ones go?